Go. All right. The next section of our data analysis is what we call bivariate data. Bi being two, so two variables. And so those two variables will be associated in some way. So it's data with two variables. Which are associated in some way. Now when I say associated, we shouldn't necessarily take that literally to mean that there is a connection between the two. There may or there may not be a connection in between the two, but something like this, for example, would be, so if you were to start with some sort of a question, so can we predict, say, test scores from the number of hours studied? Alright, so there, our two variables would be test scores and hours studied, and so we would then have a look at graphs or some other to make a decision. Alright. So what we're looking for is whether we're changing one thing, so hours studied or test scores. Changing one of those will affect the other. Now, with this particular example, it's not really, when you think about it, it's not really the test scores that are going to affect you. You get a higher test score, therefore you're going to study more or less, whatever. It's more the other way around, isn't it? So if I study more, will my test score be better? So in this case, it's hours study. Does that affect the test score? So we're looking to see if the hours studied has an effect or affects the test score. All right, so these variables, in this case the hours studied and the test score, they're specific to that example, but they're given some names. So when we're looking to see if the hours studied affects the test score, this one here, the hours studied, this would be the thing that we would change. So if I do more or less study, that's something that I change. Will that then change my test score? So this one here, the hours studied, the one that I'm changing, is it's called the explanatory variable. So the variable we change and in this case, change that. So in this case it's the hours studied is called the explanatory variable. And so that we don't have to write out explanatory variable all the time, we'll just call it EV. And the other variable in this case the test score, one that may or may not change, is called the response variable. And again, so we don't have to write all those letters out all the time, we'll just use RV. So response, and in what's its response to changing this? So changing the hours study, what's the response by the test score? All right, now you may have particularly in science, if you do chemistry, physics, even sometimes in maths, but the explanatory variable, EV, is sometimes called the independent. The independent variable, and the RV, the response variable, the dependent variable. Alright, so the response variable, what you get there depends on what happens here. Alright, so an example. Alright, so this first bit, what we're going to do is just look at identifying what are the explanatory variables and the response variables. So if I do an example, so here's the sentence or the question. Yeah, sure you can. Alright, so this example here says, can we predict people's height from their wrist measurement? Identify the RV and the EV. So there's a couple of key words here. Predict and from are our key words. So the thing that we want to predict is linked to our RV, and the thing we're predicting it from is our EV. Alright, so when you're reading these key words, predict and from. So in this case we're wanting to predict the height. So because we're wanting to use the height to predict the, we want to use the wrist to predict the height. The height's the thing we're wanting to predict. So that would be our RV, that's the thing we're wanting to predict. We're wanting to predict the height by doing what? From the wrist measurement. So we're going to use the wrist measurement to predict the height. So the thing that we're using would be the wrist measurement. Now we go around and we do that, measure people's wrists, measure the height, come up with some sort of graph or relationship between the two, and then see whether we can then go to some random person, measure their wrist and then predict their height from that. Alright, so those key words, predict and from. So the predict, what we're trying to predict is our RV, and what we're using for that prediction is our EV. Alright, short one. So exercise 3A, it's only a short one, so we'll do some theory for 3B a little bit later in the session. Alright, so 3A is just looking at things like this and figuring out which one's your response variable and which one's your explanatory.